Hey, hello everybody. Michael Gurian here, and we're on Sunday morning of our conference, our What Boys Need as Males conference. And I am your keynote speaker, the first speaker this morning. We have wonderful speakers for the day. I'm the first speaker, and I am going to switch over. I'm going to share and switch over to PowerPoint, and we are going to get started. This conference has I mean, I think already is making a splash because we're getting reviews from people and uh, coming through, and then via YouTube, and it's just so exciting for everyone. We have people all over the world, as you may know if you watch some of the earlier uh, people from all time zones. So a lot of this will get watched on YouTube later. Um, I'm going to focus this morning on what boys need as males, and I'm going to do it through my sort of Gurian science-based approach, let's call it, in which you'll see brain scans, and we'll do a lot of science that that kind of helps us to get deep into the male and the female brain, and the female brain mainly by comparison, because this is what boys need. I'll do mainly um, looking at male brain, but I'll definitely make comparisons. And there you can see, nurturing the male brain, some books there that some of this material comes from, and the latest being Boys a Rescue Plan. And the speaker right after me is Sean Coleman, co-author on that. So just know, as you hear, this is a 55-minute talk, and there's a lot of resources you can go to get the baselines for everything and get all of the research. The uh, what have I got? There it goes. So I'm kind of, if you ever have me come to your community via Zoom or on site, you're going to hear me tell this story. So this is kind of my signature story. There are these boys, and this is actually from a book by an editor, Kitty Harmon. The book is called Up to No Good: The Rascally Things Boys Do. And she asked boys to look back at their childhoods and tell her the rascally stories. And so this one is of a boy, now a man, and he's talking about when he and his friends were like 13. There's like five of them, and and these are guys who all care about each other, really love each other. They're bonded. They decide to go into a basement. They decide to turn the light off, make it completely dark, and then they decide to throw metal pointed darts at each other. Metal pointed darts at each other. So they throw these darts, and okay, and remember, these are guys who love and care about each other. Um, then someone yells "ow," which you can imagine would happen, and they turn a light on. One of them's got a dart right here, dangling, just below his eye, dangling down. So, uh, are these guys going to stop playing this game? Any of you who are raising boys or educating boys or interacting with boys and men, that nope, they're not going to stop it, but they might come up with an innovation, and in fact they do. They all go home and they get goggles or something to protect their eyes, and they all come back and they put their goggles on and they turn the light off and they throw these metal pointed darts at each other. So any guy growing up, or maybe a woman who grew up with a bunch of brothers, or wherever it was, you're going to recognize that this story makes absolute sense for guys. And so I have some things on here to ponder. Would girls do that? Remember, all of this is in the context of male brain, what boys need as males, what's going on in these guys as males. And of course, if you and I are all together in a room, you're going to say, no, this is not a way that girls are going to tend to show their love for each other. Is there some group of five girls somewhere in the world who might do this to show their love for each other? Okay, somewhere, maybe. And especially if someone sets up a sociological or academic experiment. But no, generally they're not going to do that. But boys all over the world are going to do that. So if you let that sink in, you go, oh, wow, yeah. And it's going to resonate with your experience. Again, if you had a bunch of brothers or if you're a guy, it's going to resonate with your experience. Guys tend to, and on stuff like this, the culture doesn't matter a lot. How it manifests matters in a culture, but these patterns we're going to talk about that we need to fulfill because boys need us to fulfill this. These patterns are worldwide, and they come in on the genome. They come in on the Y chromosome, as we'll talk about in a moment. So you're going to think of ways this has manifest in your childhoods or adulthoods, and you're going to be thinking about objects moving through space. These darts are objects moving through space. So when you think about what boys do and how they often interact, there's an object moving through space. Could be a ball, could be a dart. Someone right now is thinking, well, look, there's bottle rockets. Someone else is thinking, like my brother and I, we would shoot BB guns at each other, which were very painful. Um, Object moving through space. That's one thing. There's going to be aggression involved, not violence, because this game is not violence. This is an example of what I will circle to toward the end and discuss as aggression nurturance. This is nurturing through aggression, using aggression to nurture, which is very, very much a guy thing. And it comes in on, again, the male brain. So you're thinking objects are going to move through space. I wonder what examples I have of those. So bottle rockets, BB guns, anything like that, throwing stuff at each other, using your body as an object moving through space. So when you look at little kids, like in preschools, when we work in Head Start schools, you can just see them just jumping on each other, wrestling with each other, body as object moving through space. You're going to see aggression, not violence, aggression, which is healthy. And as they get older, you're going to see some pain. You're going to see them doing high risk things that will cause some pain. So keep those in mind and you've heard from other speakers in this conference who are laying this out, like David Geary, who looked at this from the evolutionary perspective. Many other speakers who laid this out. So, okay, and then you'll see male humor is usually biological. One of the reasons that we use so much humor in our Gurian Institute work that we do in communities is because it really helps get into the brain. Humor is just crucial. Education and mentoring often thrive through humor. Good teachers often have a good sense of humor, and that's how they get guys with them, like Fletch was talking about, Dr. Fletcher. And also, males are resilience builders, even when the humor is one-upping, even when they're cutting each other down. And sometimes they go overboard. Anything can go overboard, but they're building resilience, and that's something else to store, because we're going to talk about aggression nurturance. And when we, in the broader context, talk about the loss of our males being lonely, isolating, depressed, unmotivated, without purpose, without mission, where they're just receding from society. Part of what's happening is that males are historically resilience builders, and they build resilience in other people by challenging other people. And as we tell them not to do that, and we basically overcorrect, they recede, because that's a big deal for males to be building resilience. And of course, the darts game builds resilience. You got to be resilient. You're getting hit with a dart. That's very painful. Okay. So some major points we're trying to make in this conference, and really just we make in all of our work, is that males really they need us, and they're more in distress than we realize. And their distress is not much about gender stereotypes. Their distress is very deep. And basically, we are abandoning their healthy development. Are there males who are getting healthy development? Yes, of course. Their families are set up for it. Their mentoring systems are set up. But we have, I would estimate 25% to 35% of our males, could be more, who are just not getting healthy development. There are major pieces of the structure missing. Boys also often feel like failures in female-friendly or gender-neutral systems, professions, and fields. You've had speakers at this conference talk about this. It's an example I use is we don't understand what male-type depression is. We just try to make everything depression. Well, there's male-type depression. It's usually covert. Female depression tends to be more overt. So that's an example. Lack of fathers, role models, and manhood development, as well as systemic failure. Other speakers have looked at fathers, male role models, and will continue in this conference to do that. And I want to remind everybody, you can get all of the talks on helpingboysthrive.org. So just keep in touch with helpingboysthrive.org. There's a playlist for everything. Will be there by Monday. So by the time a lot of people watch this, everything will be collected there. You'll get to see Warren Farrell, Marion Hill, many others who have laid this out. And then systemic failure is an issue like in schools, like Dr. Fletcher was talking about, and I'll talk about today. We've got a lot of systemic failure in schools and in counseling systems, psych systems, because what we're teaching, what I'm teaching, is not taught in schools of education. As Christina Summers was talking about, not taught in psych. When I came up through education and psych, none of this was taught to us. So we went into classrooms, counseling centers, nonprofits, did all our work, never seeing these scans and knowing how different the male and the female brain operate. So we have a lack of maturation. To me, that's the core. What's happening is we're not developing males, and so they're not maturing, and they're not getting these sorts of things that give them adulthood. Sex and gender specific solutions to all these issues exist. So, we don't have to like reinvent a wheel, because we, over the last decades, we've been finding the solutions, and in pockets, they're getting used. And we just need to risk trying them. So systems like school systems have to invest in trying them. And I'll be laying some of them out to you today. And then, we got to alter theories to also be boy friendly. They can't just be looking at one thing, or they can't mainly female, and they can't just be gender neutral as if evolutionary biology doesn't exist. They have to also be boy friendly. And when we try this stuff and do this stuff, the systems work much better. We have the Gurian Institute, we have almost 3 decades of proof of this, which I'm going to look at with you in a moment. So the basic Gurian theory, the basic theory is that nature, nurture, and culture all absolutely matter. They all matter. And it starts in nature. So that's going to be the difference between the way I look at things and the way some other folks look at things. But this is a way that most, or maybe all of the speakers at our conference have been looking at things, trying to get at what's nature. So this is nature-based theory. I wrote a book called Nurture the Nature, because that's a kind of a Gurian thing. Nurture the nature. What I'm trying to help folks do is to figure out the nature of each child, male, female, trans, each child, figure out the nature, and then nurture that, because that's the asset that's coming in. Let's nurture that. So if you go to GurianInstitute.com and you do /success, you just click that, you're going to see all sorts of success data from decades. And Sean Kuhlman was on here and is speaking next, helped with some graph, and I'll show you those graphs. Thank you, Sean. He's like the expert at that. He's awesome, and you'll hear from him. So we have centers for excellence like Army and Navy Academy, Crespi Carmelite High School. We have a number of Gurian model schools. You'll see all of that. These are systems that have taken the risk of trying the solutions, and it's working. So you can contact GurianInstitute.com for all of what we have. You can email us at info@GurianInstitute.com. And you notice that Summer Institute. We'll be doing our Summer Institute in June, and we'll get stuff on the website about that very soon. If you're a parent just looking for a podcast, Wonder of Parenting Podcast. And if you like, I hope, good writing, you can go to michaelgurian.substack.com. So keep in touch with everything via these places. Now, these are some of the graphs that Sean helped to create based on the success data we've been given over the last 28 years. So people send it to us, and then Sean's put it into graphs. And this is just one of the slides in the graph that you'll find on our website. So you can see that things happen. Like we come in and we do the training and the observation and the consulting and help the school. And, the scores are going up. And in math and language arts, discipline referrals go down, sometimes 50 to 70%. They go down. And then the grades go up. And all this happens for both boys and girls. So even though the schools call us, and generally 80 to 90% of the questions that they have and the issues they have are with boys, when we do this work, everything goes up for both boys and girls and the whole gender spectrum. So it's a way in that helps the whole system. So you'll see the word sex gender here. So it's a word I believe I invented, where I just wanted to put the two together so that we could not argue, well, is it sex, is it gender, and then spend all our time there. I would love us to just say, look, it's sex, gender, let's look at everything. So it comes in like personality based in nature, and then it's expressed. And oh, wait, did I go back? Yeah, I went back. Huh. Okay. Okay. So that actually is a good segue to this. So it's expressed in nature, and these are scan results. And this is pretty amazing. As of April 2019, um, uh, scientists are able to do MRI of the fetus. So mom is carrying the baby now, looking at the fetal brain, the brain that's in there. And you'll see the study here. You can go access. So this is like, okay, kind of a wow, right? I mean, it would be great if we were shown this stuff from schools of ed, schools of psychology when we were all coming up in our fields, becoming teachers, counselors, even becoming parents. Because look at already in utero, how different the male and the female brain look. Already the female brain is making all these connections between all the parts of the brain up to the top of the brain, right up in here, already making connections to frontal lobe, temporal lobe, trying to set the pathways for connectivity already. The male brain doing very little of that, kind of blank. And of course, it's going to develop once born. But you can see already how different it is. And so, why are they already different in utero? Well, for folks who don't know, let me just lay it out in about 60 seconds. What happens is the X and Y chromosomes do a lot, right? So girls are XX, boys are XY. Um, uh, you can have XXY, you can have XYY, you can have intersex, absolutely. So, but mainly what you have are XX and XY. When the mom's system carrying the baby, and the baby itself senses the Y, right? This is a male. It sends a signal, and in the mom, which gets her to send from her ovaries some androgenic hormone, spurts of androgenic hormone in more than for an XX, that then tells the fetus, and androgenic is another word for testosterone, tells the fetus, okay, you gotta start dropping the testes, you gotta start flooding the system with testosterone. So 4 to 6 weeks, this starts, testosterone starts flooding the system. Now, males and females have each other's hormones, right? So when people say, well, we're human, yeah, we are human. We have each other's hormones. But the amount and the way they work and the effects they have on the brain are significantly different. So by about 6 months in utero, these systems, the XX systems, even the XYY, XY and XXY, all of those systems by around 6 months in utero, they become immune to the cross-sex hormones. So by 6 months in utero, um, these brains have already started on parallel, equal, complementary, men, women, complementary, equal, but parallel and different paths. And that's why already in utero at 8 and 9 months, you're seeing that these brains know that they're male and female brains, and that they're differentiating for sex. They're differentiating for sex. So then the child is born, and parents will say, "Oh yeah, he's a boy. He sure moves around a lot." Like that's the most common. And of course, girls move around a lot. I have two daughters, and one of them moved around a lot more than the other. So of course, girls move around a lot. But it's like parents kind of get an instinct for stuff. And what their instinct is, what they're seeing is that these brains and this neurochemistry is already set up differently. So okay, so I've set up a few things on slides for you so we can work with them. One of them that I wanted to talk about right after showing you the fetal scans is this first thing from Richard Eyre. So 84% of gray matter regions and 86% of white matter regions that are involved in intellectual performance. So schooling, thinking, schooling, anything related to that kind of performance. So school would be the easiest to talk about. Were found in the brain's frontal lobes. And frontal lobes kind of right up in here, compared to 45% and 0% for males, respectively. So females, 84% of their gray matter work and 86% of their white matter work is happening
Interesting.
here in the part of the
This thing
brain
is
that does
frozen
impulse
to the
control.
ground because of how
Oh, hey,
close that.
someone's not muted. Can you mute?
Okay.
So, do you think we could wait? Maybe I think like next week
I think it's Jeff
when it's a
Ross.
little bit warmer, we could get it when it's a little
I
bit
think
more
it's
thawed
Jeff,
out.
right? I'm looking
How
right at him.
open is it?
Oh,
What's that?
Jeff.
How open is it?
Mike, you
Pretty
can
open.
mute him.
I can mute him.
Is it all the way open?
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much. Okay, so 84% of white matter and 86% well, gray matter and white matter is here, right? For girls. So think about girls in school for here, compared to 45% and 0% here for guys. They're doing their work in gray matter, white matter further back, further down, and further back. Okay, so just hold that thought because that's pretty different. And when you think about a school, we're going to use it as our metaphor here. You think about a school and think about the issues that boys often have in school. A lot of those issues are that the teacher and the system might expect them to be operating much more out of the frontal because the girls are operating much more out of the frontal. And so, impulse control, where does that happen? Here. Girls are operating out of that double, and in fact, in one case, 86% more, right? Executive decision making, frontal. Girls are operating there much more than boys are, right? So, sitting still, sitting still happens much more because the frontal tells you to sit still. So you sit still, but guys are not operating there. And then the behavior, the jumping around on each other and doing all of this wonderful touch attachment we'll talk about that boys do that we always overcorrect or often overcorrect. Well, girls aren't going to tend to do that as much because they're much more in the frontal, but guys are operating further back and their brains are not inferior. They're just different. But if the system doesn't really look at it, well, of course, 90% of the discipline referrals are going to be boys. And, and the guys who are mainly dropping out of that system are going to be boys. So this is really, really important. The second thing I put on here is from Velma, University of Pennsylvania. So Ruben and Raquel Gurr have been working in this field at University of Pennsylvania they were the first people whose scans I was able to look at in 1989 when I started developing this theory. So thanks to them, and then Velma, thanks to her and her team, they're constantly doing this work in male-female brain difference. So here now is an example of another difference that got set in utero. Because remember, this 84%, 80%, all this is preset, right, by X and Y chromosomes, by the way the hormones work on the brain in utero, and then kids are born. And this is the nature part. Well, this is another nature part. Guys lateralize their brain activity. We tend to do it on one side. Women and girls cross over much more. They use both sides more than males do. And that would make sense when you think about, oh, yeah, females are using so much more white matter activity than males. In fact, Richard Eyre also has published studies showing that females use up to 10 times more white matter activity than males, and males use up to 7 times more gray matter activity. Gray matter happens in splotches, white matter activity is throughout the brain. So it would make sense that females are cross-talking constantly, that their brains are cross-talking. And in fact, there's only really one area where males outperform females in multitasking, and that is in spatial multitasking, like juggling, or throwing objects, right? Objects moving through space. That's spatial. Objects moving through space. Okay, males tend to outperform worldwide in that multitasking. That's it. All the other multitasking, on average, females outperform males. And we're going to talk about exceptions in a moment, but that's worldwide. So this white matter, gray matter use difference, is important. Like males, for instance, have more actual white matter in their brains than female, but the key is the white matter activity and the gray matter activity, the way we're using our brains. So females tend to do more multitasking and crosstalk, and males tend to do things on one side. Well, that is going to explain for folks some things like, okay, why is it you got to give those guys, if they're going to perform, you give them one thing at a time? And why is it they have trouble transitioning between tasks? And we see this in the Head Start classrooms and in the young kids in elementary, where the teacher will kind of walk by and go, okay, put your stuff in your cubby. We're going to move over to circle time. And a couple of minutes later, that some boys are still doing what they were doing before. Didn't hear. They were in one part of their brain doing this task, didn't even hear, didn't get in there. And the strategy the teacher ends up using with boys is often multi-strategic, like kind of holding them on the shoulder, looking them in the eye, and then auditory. Hey, buddy, time to put that away. And then he go, oh, okay. And then he does it. He's not naturally multitasking as much without as much white matter activity. So these are things, again, that it's so important people know. And the work we've done with Head Start, those teachers learn this, and it's just kind of life-changing. And that preschool to prison pipeline that we've all heard of, we start erasing that, because the boys are now, they're not trouble. They're not constantly getting in trouble. Everyone understands them, and things are working better. Same with elementary and so on. So, okay, so those are some examples of brain differences. All right, so a little humor. Just out, a new book for men on how to understand women. And of course, part of what we're saying in this conference and the work that Gurian Institute does is we're also trying to build up a much bigger book on males. And we're going to keep building our book on girls and women, absolutely. But we want to kind of build a bigger book on males too, because there's just too much we don't know, and that we're not taught as we become professionals and parents. And you see the word bridge brains here. It's a term I invented about 30 years ago to talk about the 1 in 5 exception rate. So whenever we talk about anything, I have to pull it out to talk about it, like, white matter activity or anything, or spatial. Guys tend to rely more on objects moving through space than girls. But of course, there's going to be an exception. You're going to know somebody. You're going to say, wait a minute, I know a girl. She's an engineer. She's really great at objects moving through space. And of course, that's right. There's always going to be an exception rate, but the exceptions will prove the rules. When you expand your sample size wide enough, you're going to go, okay, I've got this one who's an exception. But if I go to 5, okay, the exception proved the rule. 4 out of 5, this is going to work. And that's why it's so good to use it in systems, because you're catching everybody. You're catching the exceptions, but you're also catching the rule. Using words is another one. You'll see the study here. So females tend to rely on both sides of the brain and have word centers on both sides of the brain. And so they're doing connectivity between word centers and the emotive centers and the memory centers and the sensorials that are midbrain. They're connecting on both sides. Males tend to be mainly on the left. We tend to be on one side. And this is huge. Think about this. I mean, this is something we all should have been taught, because it explains, when we say use your words, right? Use your words is something that's very common that we say in school settings, parenting settings, and it's good. I'm a therapist. I used to say use your words. I mean, it's good. We got to use words. It's great. We can train people to use words. But when that becomes our standard in a system, we're of course going to lose a bunch of boys, because they don't have the connectivity that girls do. So when we say boys can't get at what they're feeling in words as well as girls on average, we are absolutely right. On average, they cannot. We sometimes have to wait 6 hours or 12 hours or longer to ask them the question again about what they were feeling so they can put it into words. And so they can't immediately do it. And they often, some can. I'm a very verbal guy. At a given moment, I can. But our system's got to look at this, because if we don't, then we're going to be, again, guys are defective. They're not using the words. They're defective. And then there's ramifications for that. And they're not. They are doing things differently. So I put some strategies down here that we teach. So we started developing these about 30 some years ago in our first pilots at University of Missouri, Kansas City. That's when we started all this back after the Wonder of Boys. And then we did Boys and Girls Learn Differently, 2-year pilots, 6 school districts. taught all this to teachers, and they innovated and we innovated and then codified it in Boys and Girls Learn Differently. And then in the training work that the Gurian Institute does, we take this place to place. So we developed some of these strategies. So one of the first strategies that I developed back in the late 80s, early 90s was the visual graphics. So don't have the guys write until they have drawn what they're going to write. And this is not needed by all guys, but it will be needed by some. And you'll know it is because you'll see the grades, you'll see the amount of sensorial detail, you'll see the amount of emotive detail, you'll even see the number of words, you'll see the organization of a paper, and you'll look at it and go, I've got like 5 boys in my classroom or 7 boys in my classroom, and they're not performing well at this. But, almost all the girls are, and some other boys are. Well, what's happening is I'm the teacher. I gave a word prompt. Write about what you learned at the What Boys Need as Males conference. I gave a word prompt and I wrote it up on the whiteboard. Write about it. It's a word prompt. It's a verbal prompt. And then I wanted them to start writing, but they can't access the verbals in the same way, especially those 5 to 7. And so what I need them to do is draw it out. So get a piece of paper, teach them how to, cut it into 4 or 6, and then draw out what they're going to write. So then we started seeing the grades going from D to B, from C to A, because if they drew it out for like 20 minutes, then they're going to write out what they drew, and they have built-in organization, and they can perform on average as well as the girls around them on average. So these are some of those strategies, throwing balls back and forth while doing therapy to get guys to be able to access more, moving objects through space, hacky sack in classrooms, all of these things, brain-based movement, all of this competition game theory, these are all things that we use that are good for girls and are urgent for boys. We're going to lose those 5 to 7 boys over a period of years if we don't use this theory and strategies. Okay, I keep going the wrong direction. Okay, so a little more humor. These things come over the internet to us. You may have seen this. Boys are different. The biochemistry is important. And we've had other talks about testosterone, and it is important. Males have 10 to 20 times more testosterone than females. Later, it's a sex chemical for, earlier as they're kids, it's more of this aggression, risk-taking chemical, and it's linked to spatials. So this, which may be made up, but in this thing, this is not something you're going to see most girls do, because their frontal lobe is going to go, why? Just like they're saying, why throw darts? We can just chat and do each other's hair and try on clothes and take a walk to show we love each other. We don't have to throw darts. And the same with this. They're going to say, that's just dangerous. I'm not going to do that. We're not going to take that risk. But the guy's testosterone, flooding the brain is going to say, yeah, let's take that risk. And actually, that's fine. So it's a good thing. We hope he doesn't get hurt. But okay, so when we talk about sex, gender, sex and gender, let me just kind of put here, because there's so much in the news and so much in social media about, is there any such thing as sex, and isn't everything gender, and all of that. So this is what I've done to try to help everyone understand all the pieces of this. And I just feel like it's, when we talk about sex, gender, it's really important to know what we're talking about and talk about all. So physiological sex, that's, coming in on the XXXY, the stem gametes, they're all different, okay? Anatomy, obviously different, reproductive organs different. You could say, well, but we're all human. Yes, we are. And these are different. And these are elements of sex that are set the human baseline. Then you have neurological sex, and we're talking about it separately, but remember, the body and the brain are actually not separate. So it's all body brain. It's all one thing, but we talk about the brain as separate. So we'll talk about neurological sex. So you have male, female brain. So the baseline is binary. There are 2 sexes. That is binary. Gender can be fluid, but brain sex and sex is binary. And trans even occurs as extreme bridge brain. So you have the University of Cleveland Medical School is doing scans and is showing the difference between trans brains and other brains. And a trans brain has 20 to 30 brain centers that are operating like the other sex, so the other physical sex. So these exceptions can happen, and they're very difficult. And so, we have to really help with this. There's great variety. Sexual orientation, LGB, the LGB part of LGBTQIA, the LGB part, that is wired in utero by hormones that are also wiring male and female brain. So all that hormone stuff, there are exceptions. Around 5% of mammals have a same-sex orientation, and that's set in the sexually dimorphic nucleus in the anterior hypothalamus. So LGB people are male and female, and their sexual orientation hardwires to be same-sex, or if they're bi, to be both. So just that's another element that's hardwired. So then gender is social construct. Gender is, I don't like that social role. I'm not sure I like this social role. I want to pick my social role. And I even want to sort of pick where I fit on the spectrum. So that's gender fluidity, and that also exists. And I have always called gender fluidity bridge brains. Now it's called gender fluidity. Um, it absolutely exists, yes, but the sex doesn't disappear. So just because someone says I'm gender fluid doesn't mean that when they go to a doctor, the doctor doesn't need to know whether they're XX or XY. The doctor needs to know how their cells are set up to treat them. So the sex still exists, but they're gender fluid and they're working in that area and figuring things out in that area. I make the distinction between brain sex dysphoria and gender dysphoria. It's another sort of Gurian thing where I'm begging people to get this into DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, because people who are trans have brain sex dysphoria. Their brain sex is looking like the other. People who have gender dysphoria, remember, dysphoria is depression, right? So people who have gender dysphoria often don't have brain sex dysphoria. And that's part of why a year or two later, they'll say, oh, okay, I'm not. And how lucky we are that we didn't start them as kids on invasive therapies based on them saying, wait, I'm gender fluid. Because if they're gender fluid and they have gender dysphoria, we're going to work with them on that depression and on that dysphoria and on any element that's existing there. They could also be on the spectrum. A number of other elements can exist. So we're working with them, and then year or two later, we're seeing them go, okay, I get where I am now, and some will remain gender fluid throughout, of course, but their sex hasn't changed. That's the crucial thing. Okay, so I hope that explanation of the four elements helps. Then we can talk about everything. Um, all right, so here's another study. Daniel Amen, who spoke at our conference, we interviewed him. Great guy with incredible work. He's done hundreds of thousands of brain scans, and this is just one of the scans that shows why is it that boys, like in classrooms, why is it they need to move around a lot? Why is it that so many of the strategies that help them love school and stay in school and learn are physical movement strategies, whether it's objects moving through space or moving their bodies, having brain breaks every 10 to 20 minutes? It's largely because they are so cerebellum dependent. Males do a lot of their work in the doing center of the brain. Yes, they do it higher up, but they get a lot going on in the doing center. That's the cerebellum. So we want to use that. And when kids move around in a classroom, no harm to girls, great for girls, but urgent for boys. We got to be having the movement so that their brains can work well. I'm going to say a quick thing about gaming and everything digital because it's crucial. We got to get our kids off of social media and digital life. They can't be doing 6 hours on a screen during the day at school and then 3 more hours at home. Can't do it. Dangerous for the brain. And to pick out just gaming, gaming and porn would be things that where the brain starts looking like a coke addict's brain. Don't want it, can't do it. We've got to take control of it. I do a whole other talk on that. I'm not going to do it here, but big deal, big deal. So here's a scan. You can see the original study there. This is a scan that shows, again, the look at the female brain. Scientists give the same task, right? The female brain is doing it 80 to 90% up in the frontal. And look at the guy doing the same task. He's doing none of it in the frontal. He's doing it further back in gray matter areas further back. And he's got cerebellum involvement. She doesn't. She's mainly doing it in the frontal. So another example, when you think about systems, got to be thinking, okay, guys do things in other parts of the brain further back. How do we stimulate those parts of the brain? Our systems are set up mainly to operate from in the frontal. Like, talk to me about what you feel. Counseling systems, that's frontal. Sit still and I'm going to teach you this and do a worksheet. That's frontal. So we got to look at the whole system and be activating the male brain as much as we activate the female. I'm looking at time. I kind of want to take some questions. So these are a bunch more where there are differences. I'll keep this up and speak about one of them. And if someone asks a question, I'll come back to this. The problem solving part of the brain, big deal in the male brain, big deal in all brains. Let's face it, big deal in all brains. But males often will default to this temporal parietal junction. So they'll get blood flow there when they see a problem to be solved. And that can actually often be an emotional problem, to be solved in their relationship. And she's got a lot of feelings about it that she's trying to express, and he moves to the problem solving. And so, ultimately what we hope for is that he listens to her and she will listen to him. And then at a certain point, they can problem solve together, right? So we're using both. There are a number of these differences. We know of about 100 right now of these differences in the brain. So this is another profound difference that I wish we were all taught. And that people, when we go to schools, they look at this and it helps the system to change, because the female brain is always active, even in a rest state. So these are rest states. Thank you, Daniel Amen, for these scans. Amen clinics. If you haven't discovered the Amen clinics, really look at the Amen clinics. They do incredible work. So here's the female brain, even in the rest state. So even when her brain is bored, think about a classroom. She's bored, but her brain is active. She's taking notes, she's listening, she's thinking about 2 or 3 other things. But when the male brain gets bored, it empties out. So you just have survival, but it empties out. So he really doesn't hear the directions. So if he's not moving around every 10 to 20 minutes, or he's not stimulated objects moving through space, and the system isn't set up to also include him, his brain is often going to go to this rest state. And so of course he's going to fail in comparison to female brain. Of course you're going to have more males dropping out, more males getting in trouble, more males whapping each other to keep their brains awake, fidgeting too much for the teacher to keep their brains awake, and not doing the assignments because they've gone to the rest state. Big deal. So this is a scan that, thank you, Daniel, again, for giving me the scan. I asked him for a scan of a bridge male. So we talked about bridge brains. We talked about, maybe gender fluid as bridge. So you recognize the other 2 scans from before. And now you see in the rest state, there's emotive involvement in midbrain that doesn't exist in the sort of prototypical. So would be the 1 in 5 or 1 in 7 exception rate. And, I would call this a bridge. So this is someone who's bridging, right, between the sexes somewhat. Brain is still male. You can see that it's more, more empties out in a rest state, kind of like male, but you see some other activity. So bridge male. So we've got to remember there's 8 billion people on Earth right now, right? 4 billion ways to be male, 4 billion ways to be female. And some people are in the middle of the spectrum. And so for parenting, bi-strategic parenting is huge. And other people in our conference have talked about it. Marion Hill, bi-strategic parenting might be a term I use, but Warren Farrell talked about it, the importance of father. So a number of people talked about this. Maternal and paternal nurturance are both important. And what I've always tried to add to this when I talk about this is that if we want maturity, if we want frontal lobe connectivity, remembering that maturity over the 20-year lifespan, child to adult, maturity, right, is getting stuff to be done where it's done in the brain and also getting it connected to the frontal, right? So both are going on in order to mature. We're honing skills that might be in midbrain, and we're also trying to move more activity via what's called the default mode network, so that there's constant connection to frontal and temporal up here. And if children don't have paternal nurturance, if father has been sent out or is gone or isn't actively fathering, and there aren't male role models, and there aren't all these people around the kid who are, and some of whom are doing paternal nurturance, you don't get as much of this connectivity. So you get less maturity for males, and you're going to get some of the extremes, like more crime, more gang activity, etc. So we got to have both. Like mother is absolutely essential. Mother is absolutely essential. And father is essential. And if father is not there, then male role models essential. And I show this a lot. I noticed that Warren Farrell showed this too. We love this. You can see that the brains are seeing objects moving through space differently. The father wants to throw the kid higher. The kid is like, I'm an object moving through space, and but the mom is like, no, that's too high. Her frontal is saying dangerous, dangerous. The brain is seeing the object moving through space differently, and we really need both. Okay, so in this talk, the last thing I want to get into, and I will have a little time for questions, is aggression nurturance. So about 30 years ago, I started looking at aggression nurturance and empathy nurturance. They overlap, but they also differ. They're parallel, they're equal, they're complementary. One is not better than the other. And I'd like to tell this story to illustrate this actually happened. There were a bunch of 10 to 12-year-olds who were playing street hockey on the block around the corner from me. They had their net set up. They're on their rollerblades. They're playing street hockey, and a guy, 11-year-old guy, falls down, kind of skins his knee slightly. And the girl on the other team who's near him, she comes right over, stops playing, comes right over, touches him, says, "Are you okay? What can I do? How can I help?" And which is really great for him, right? And that's direct empathy nurturance. Just her brain fills up, her insula fills up with mirror neurons, so she's feeling his pain, and the female brain fills up with more of these. And then her oxytocin creates even more oxytocin. It's bonding chemical, tend and befriend, Shelley Taylor calls it. And she is tending and befriending, and her biochemistry is sending her to this. And it's beautiful, and it helps the young guy. Different, though, than aggression nurturance, which is equally good. The guy on the boy's team comes across, and he looks down at the boy, and he sees that the boy has a skinned knee. He's not dead. He's okay. And he gets, get up, we need you. Says it really loudly, get up, we need you, and continues playing the game. My argument has always been that is equally, from a brain-based point of view, equally useful. That's aggression nurturance. Now, he didn't say, "You wuss, stop crying." He didn't say that. If he said that, any of us watching are going to probably go, "Dude, come here." And we're going to say, "That's bad leadership. That's just bad leadership. Don't do it this way. Come on, do it this way." So he didn't say that, though. He said, get up, we need you. So what he says to the guy is, you're in an aggression system. You can be resilient. You can rejoin the system and have a mission and a purpose and work with all of the rest of us toward a goal, or you can sit there. And so how great this guy, how wonderful what he said, because what it does is it says, okay, yeah, I've got resilience. I've got a mission. I'm back in there. So how wonderful that he got empathy nurturance, how wonderful that he got aggression nurturance from this fallen boy did. And it would work for a fallen girl. So what happens in the male's brain, though, that went by and said, get up, we need you, is that he did have some mirror neurons in the insula. He had some, but his testosterone cells are overriding those. So he's like, yeah, if he's not dead, yeah, I'm going to override the mirror neurons. I'm going to kill them off. And I'm going to say, get up, we need you. So, and the last slide I'll leave up here as we do questions is, so aggression is not violence. Aggression is not violence. These are not the same thing. We have commingled them in our cultural conversations, and we should not. When we commingle them, then we correct every aggressive thing that every boy does as if it's bad. And it's not. A lot of it is aggression nurturance, grabbing each other, wrestling, one up, and all this stuff is aggression nurturance. It builds resilience, it builds the brain, and it builds connectivity to the frontal. That's aggression nurturance. Violence, which you see over here, is, yeah, okay, violence we don't want. And, most men and males are not violent, but some can be, and some women can be violent. So we don't want that. Aggression is, I'm challenging you. I might even be manipulating you. Yeah, I'm challenging you. And you got to build your core self through the challenge that I'm putting to you. That's aggression nurturance. Violence is, I want to destroy you. So bullying is violence. It's repeated violence. I'm going to destroy your core self. So we don't put up with bullying. But, bullying is not aggression nurturance. And obviously, hitting each other and causing severe damage, not aggression nurturance. That's violence. But guys bopping each other on the shoulder, not violence. aggression nurturance. And everyone figures out what their line of danger is and what they're going to allow on a playground. Is that dangerous? No, that's not dangerous. It's aggression nurturance, and it's healthy. So I'll, as you can tell, I'm wanting to pack into this 50 minutes um, the basic information so that you, and some strategies for you so that you get the basics and you can start thinking about male brain and female brain, as well as the other things that we're all thinking about, masculinity, all the other things. Let's also think about male and female brain, because then we can reorient systems so they work for absolutely everybody. If we don't think about nature, what is actually coming in on the genome, then we're not really going to change the system to help everybody, because we've just decided that that nature over there, it's not good, or yeah, we don't need to really pay attention. We'll just change it. I obviously would rather that we understood it and then set up our systems to understand everyone. So I'm going to leave this slide up. And of course, you'll see you can contact us for anything at info@gurianinstitute.com. Fletch and I and others in our system go everywhere and do training and teaching on this. So just connect at info@gurianinstitute.com. Okay, Fletch, do we have some questions?
Absolutely. So the first question is, what is the best way to get boys to make the transition to the next task or activity? I
Yeah,
see in boys, especially my 10-year-old, how difficult it is for him to stop what he is doing and start homework, for example.
right. So that's going to be the multisensory approach. So this sounds like it's a mom. So the mom or dad is going to go up to the boy and, eye contact, touch on the shoulder. So that's touch attachment, tactile. And then the auditory. Okay, I don't think you heard me, but it's time for us to do this. Are you
Mhm.
ready to switch to this? And now we got three senses involved rather than just the auditory. Just, hey, Joe, put your stuff away and go outside. So
Mhm.
try multisensory approach and try it a number of times. All these strategies, try them a number of times, and they should work.
Yes. Um, Do the next question. Do these brain differences hold in relationship to birth order or age of mother at birth of child?
Got it. Uh, yes, the brain differences are the brain differences. They're coming in, and we add on birth order. So that's the short answer to that. So if you are researching birth order right now or thinking about it, um, uh, uh, add on the brain differences, and or think about the brain differences and then add on birth order, because yes, they're not going to change the brain differences. Those exist, but yeah, they can affect definitely how they manifest.
All right. The next question is, what is an acceptable time for boys to play video games? The challenge in our home is watching stupid YouTube videos.
Right. Right. Okay. So this is going to depend on the age of the child. My book, Saving Our Sons, I have birth to two, 2 to 4, 4 to 6. So I lay it all out by age groups developmentally. So I have to give a quick answer here. Go to Saving Our Sons, depending on what the age of the child is you're asking about, and then it lays out the number of hours. I no, I would say no video games on a school night. Not just me, the AMA. I mean, we're all saying that. No video games on a school night, please. Obviously, we need them to do homework. We want them to relate with us as family. We want them to do service projects. I mean, like we just no, we don't need video games on a school night, and you can equally say we don't need YouTube on a school night. Save it for the weekend. If there's a little bit on a school night, then it's got to be a little bit. Like we got to have 15 minutes of YouTube and 15 minutes of video games. And again, it's going to depend on the age of the child. If the child's 18, it's different. But if the child is pre-K right through into 13, 14, 15, we got to keep them off social media, no smartphones, keep them off the excessive video games and YouTube.
Okay. Here's the last question. Games like World of Warcraft is evil. We need Federal Gaming Review Board. Thank you, Dr. Gurian. Question. Please explain autistic and ADHD.
Okay, so ADHD is has ADD and the hyperactive component. ADD is attention deficit disorder. With the H is hyperactive. That's actually what I had as a kid. I was on Ritalin as a kid at 10 in 1968. So that's the hyperactive component. Just can't sit still, and that's how I was. And ADD is the tension, just not able to pay attention in the right way. Autism, of course, that's a whole spectrum of ASD, And yeah, if you Google that, you're going to see that these are different. You can have them comorbid, but they're different. Autism often is one part of the brain really, really working, but a lot of the social emotional connectivity is not there. So not picking up social cues. So they are different. They can come together, but they are different.
Okay. That is the last question that we can ask as it's 9:55 and we are getting ready to transition over to the next session. So please log out. Please complete your survey. If you haven't done your survey, I will share it in the next session as well, but complete the survey link. It is also on your conference at a glance. And we're going to head over to hear from Sean Coleman in his new book and data that he's sharing. See you in the next session.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Fletch.
Mhm.